All right. So, good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join me today. I think I've met most people here, but for those of you that I haven't met, my name is Kat Nguyen. I am the Publications Editorial Coordinator here at the Library Press at UF, which is a very long title for the Open Access Journals Program Manager. So I offer operational and technical support and then also liaise with FLVC, which is the Florida Virtual Campus, who hosts our instance of OJS. I'm also here to help folks keep up to date with current best practices in scholarly publishing and to make sure that all of our journal editors are getting that information. So today will be a quick introduction to accessibility for journals, particularly the journals that we publish, with an emphasis on article and issue galleys rather than website accessibility. All right. So this year, accessibility has been at the forefront of scholarly publishing due to new and upcoming legislation that requires a lot of accessibility needs to be met. As one of our core values, we at the Library Press have been doing a lot of behind the scenes work and learning to make sure that we're publishing accessible content. After all, as an open access publisher, we want our readers all abilities to access our publications. Accessibility benefits everyone. So in April 2024, the DOJ issued ADA Title II revisions to ensure web and mobile accessibility in state and local governments, which is usually at the AA level of WCAG 2.1, which is I forget what the acronym stands for, but it's the Web Accessibility Guidelines. So this includes websites, documents, media, texts, and applications. And as a large public institution, which is institutions that serve over 50,000 people. We are required to comply by April 24th, 2026. So the UF libraries here have spoken with UF's general counsel, who has advised us to make sure that all of our journals provide accessible formats for all issue and article galleys after April 24th, 2026. It is technically recommended to provide both accessible PDFs and HTML galleys, but UF is aware that this is not realistic to implement for most folks. I think in most cases, really accessible PDFs is probably going to be sufficient for people. HTML requires a little bit more heavy lifting, I think, than most people have capacity for. Um, and I think another nice thing to know is that this is not retroactive, so you do not need to be worrying about remediating any past publications. This is only for publications post April 2026. So if you have an issue coming out, let's say in December, you don't necessarily need to have everything perfect up and running by then. I do want to emphasize two things. One, the implementation of these accessible formats is not optional. This is it could be a liability for big UF. So we don't want to get into any hot water there. And of course, this is something that we want to do as a library press, that we're publishing accessible formats so that everybody can access what they need to access. And two, we're starting early today to kind of implement an action plan and not necessarily to scare you. I don't want to intimidate anyone. So in today's workshop, we'll kind of just be touching on the basics of what accessible PDF looks like and what HTML looks like, what those galleys, what you would kind of need to do to get those galleys up and running. And there will be plenty of time after for some questions. So what is an accessible PDF? Accessible PDFs are PDFs, normal PDFs that are formatted and tagged in a way that an assistive device, such as a screen reader, can follow the hierarchy of the document. Um, an assistive device reads the tags on the PDF to make sure that the user is reading and hearing the information in the correct order. For example, a lot of time articles have text in two columns, and we naturally know which way to go, but screen readers may not necessarily know how to follow that order. And while accessible PDFs are not technically fully accessible, there is still a lot of value in using accessible PDFs, primarily that they're much easier to adopt as an accessible galley rather than HTML. So accessible PDFs look just like normal PDFs, but there are a few key differences. They can be read by an assistive device easily. The tags The headings are tagged in a hierarchy. Lists and tables are tagged to be accurately read by an assistive device. Informative, alternative, or alt text is provided for important images, figures, tables, um, and there is a correct tab order for keyboard-only users, which means that they can hit tab and the reader will follow the correct order. So when you open an accessible PDF in Adobe, this is what it looks like. On the side here is just, it looks on the face, looks just like a normal PDF. There's nothing really different from a normal one. As you can see, it looks identical. To open the accessibility tags, what you'll do is click on the tag button in this right-hand menu. I've circled it here in red on the screen. I'm also clicking around it, so I don't know if you can see that. But as you can see, each section is tagged with SECT sect here. And then paragraphs are tagged with a key. So that just identifies that that text is that whole piece is a section or that paragraph is a paragraph. And figures are also tagged. I think we have one, I think under art or something here. And so tagging the labels of each section of the text here ensures that the device can understand the order and then the hierarchy of the information within the document so that it can establish a reading order. So when an accessible PDF is read by an accessible device, it uses the tags that you've added in the previous screen and the reading order that you create to read it in the correct order. So the correct reading order is essential for assistive devices to read the content in the right order, especially for journal articles. Again, like I said, with the 2 columns of text. So to see the reading order generated from your tags or to edit what you have, what you'll do is hit the 3 dots that are in that accessibility tags window. I've circled here in red. And then the reading order window should pop up once you hit reading order. The window that will pop up is outlined here in blue. And as you can see, it will gray out the order that the things are in. And then you are able to change the reading order or edit it as you see fit to make sure that it's in the right order that you want it to be read in. As you can see, this one is not quite right because I think it goes from the running head to the body text immediately and skips over the title. But again, that's something that you can edit post. So to create an accessible PDF, the quick and dirty is what you'll want to do is start with an accessible source document. So for example, if your source document is in Word, what you'll want to do is make sure that your Word document is accessible using the built-in Word heading styles or your own heading styles and alt text. And then once you export your source document to a PDF, you'll want to make sure to retain all tags and accessibility formatting when you're saving. And then once you're in Adobe, you'll double check your accessibility using Adobe's built-in accessibility checker and then the accessibility tools I just showed you to verify that everything is correct. So what does it mean to have an accessible source document? This is what I just took a screenshot of a Word document. As you can see in the navigation pane to the left of the window, there's a hierarchy of headings here. So you see heading 1 and then 2 is nested into heading 1 and then 3 is nested to 2. So heading 1 is the primary heading for your article. So you would just put your article title in heading 1. And then any sections and subsections would use headings 2, 3, and so on and so forth to ensure the proper hierarchy. So all you really need to do is add the appropriate heading style to each section of your article. And that is really, I feel like, the bulk of what we want to do here. And then you'll also want to make sure that things like figures, tables, images, have informative alt text. So for something like a table, you could just, in the alt text, you wouldn't describe it as, oh, this is a table with 5 columns and 3 rows. You'll have to inform and let the device know that this is a table that refers to XYZ or displays the data for XYZ. So really just by adding the appropriate heading style to your article, you're making your document so much more accessible to all users already. And then once you're ready to export to a PDF, Word has a built-in accessibility checker tool, which is great, a great built-in beginner tool to check that your document's accessibility. It usually just checks for color and contrast, alt text, table information, and then your document structure, which is the heading style. So to access that, what you'll do is go to the Review tab here, and then click on Check Accessibility. And it should open the Accessibility Assistant, which is on the right side of the window here for final checks. And then if anything is wrong, then it will tell you what you need to fix. And then it's as easy as that. So making sure that your source document is accessible will make the rest of the process that much easier. So make sure that when your articles are using the proper headings in Word or whatever word processor that you use before you really typeset, format, and export. And that kind of is the quick run through of accessible PDFs. I hope it wasn't too intimidating. So next up, we'll be talking about HTML. So HTML is the ultimate accessible galley. It stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and it is the standard markup language for web pages. A markup language is a text encoding system which specifies the structure and formatting of a document and shows the relationship between its parts. I am not an expert in HTML by any means, but I will be showing you kind of the basics of what it looks like to create and use HTML galleys, how much goes into that. So the unique thing, excuse me, the unique thing about HTML galleys that make them so much more accessible than an accessible PDF is that they are reflowable. This means that no matter what device or browser that a user is reading on, the text will automatically resize and adjust to fit to the size of the screen. And then users can also scale the text up and down to whatever size that they prefer. So HTML is also highly customizable, especially when you pair it with CSS, which is a cascading style sheet file. And that's the code that styles the text that's in the HTML file. However, HTML is significantly more complex and laborious compared to PDF. It is an entirely new language and it's a lot to do. And I know most people here are very busy and have lots of other things that they're doing. Um, and most people are also very comfortable using Word and Adobe Acrobat to create PDF files compared to something like this. There are a lot of resources freely available on the internet to learn HTML, such as W3 Schools or and other things. But there is one cool one that we'll be taking a look at today, which isn't necessarily focusing on learning HTML, but it is a great HTML starter for OJS. So the University of Alberta Libraries journal publishing program created an amazing HTML template that includes a lot of really nice styling. Though I will say that OJS also has built-in styling of HTML. However, I've never used or tried it, so I'm not entirely sure what it would look like. The template that the University of Alberta Libraries developed has all of the necessary code to get you started, and you really just need to paste in your article title, author information, etc. And we'll take a look at what their template looks like. So this, I know, looks very intense on the left side. So the cool thing about the template is that you can download it and then open it in something really basic like the built-in notepad on your computer. And the actual code is much longer than what I have here on the left side of the screen. But I've selected the portion of the HTML template where you actually add the information that you need to add. So as you can see, the code is nested similarly to the way the headings are nested. So there's like one big heading and then smaller things within that. This particular code is broken into sections using the div tag here, which creates a container. So once you create that container using that div tag, you put things into that container and it kind of keeps it organized that way. Um, and this one uses containers just because they have styles coded into it so that each section is styled to look a certain way. But I want to let you know that You can also be super bare bones about this and create an HTML file where it's only headings and text. It doesn't have to be anything crazy like this. Um, but the article text here will be pasted into this third blue highlight here. And then the div containers just contain, this one contains the bibliographic information, so title, author, institution, and then it would include the abstract here as well. And then you can also just paste the article text using different heading tags. And again, the headings are similar to in Word, where you have an H1 heading for the title, H2 for a section, H3 for a subsection, and so on. So the cool thing about this particular template is that the navigation menu in the side nav container, which is at the very top here, um, creates a side menu on the actual HTML file when you open it up. Each of the Ahref tags here links to the headings that you use here. So right here where it says ID abstract, H2 abstract. Um, this enables users to click on the heading in the side navigation and then it will jump to that section in the article itself. So if you open the template into a browser with nothing in it, this is what it looks like. So users are able to download HTML files and just open them directly into their browser. So the article should look the same in every browser, regardless of the device that's being used. It'll just be scaled a little bit differently to fit the screen. And as you can see, this is the side navigation menu here. So if a user wanted to click to background, it would jump them to the background. Um, and there's obviously a hierarchy in place here. The abstract is also styled to look a little bit differently from the body text so that it stands out. And then this is what the code looks like if I add some sample text in here. So the title of the article is right here in the bold, and the abstract is in the H2 tag with an ID that's blue and bolded. Like I mentioned earlier, the ID function here allows the heading to be linked to the side navigation menu so that users can jump to whichever section that they want. I technically should have put an ID for my second H2 heading, which is in orange here, um, for it to connect to the side navigation correctly, but I did not. As you can see, the text of the article really just looks like plain text. You would just paste and use the tag P for paragraph, paste for whatever paragraph is, and then move on to the next thing. Um, again, you just need to make sure that things are appropriately tagged so that the hierarchy is in place there. And then when you open the HTML file up in a browser with what I pasted earlier, this is what it would look like, excluding these blue boxes. So the blue boxes have the code so that you can see what the end product looks like. So when I paste it in to the heading, here's where the title goes. This is how it displays. And then when you add in your text for the abstract using the P tag nested under this abstract heading, this is how it displays. For example, I think the great thing about HTML is that it's very consistent. Everything looks the same. It's easy to look at. For example, all of the H2 headings here are the same size and style. So for many folks, I think using this template as a starting point, if you choose to develop HTML files, is really more than sufficient. It's plenty, and it provides you with a lot of the work already done. I will say though that this particular file references a CSS file that I believe is hosted by the University of Alberta Libraries. I don't know if they're going to change that style sheet and if that would affect the files in the future, but I mean, use that at your own discretion. Again, you really only need to paste the text here and make sure that all of your headings are appropriately tagged. Again, if you don't want to use this particular template or just find it too much, I think that's totally fine. Again, you could just create a bare bones HTML template with the appropriate headings and body text, and then update your template as you continue to learn more about HTML. All right, I threw a lot of information at you. I just want to remind you all, don't worry about perfection here. This is a learning process for all of us. Tracy, our library press director, has spent much of this year learning how to develop accessible formats for our publications, mostly accessible PDFs, and then also has been learning how to create effective EPUBs, which she has been very successful in. She always runs our publications through screen readers and they are able to read it, and it's awesome to have that. We are not asking you all to have perfectly accessible and dazzling HTML galleys by your next issue or anything like that. Um, we're just here to help you kind of get a plan started and get your foot in moving in the right direction as you make this shift alongside us. I also want to reiterate that you do not need to be including both file formats when you publish. Realistically, I think accessible PDFs will be less time consuming for everyone to develop and will probably be sufficient to ensure that we're following those Title II revisions at this point in time. Um, and even if your accessible PDF is not perfect by your next publication, that is totally fine. You have a lot of time to really work out the nitty-gritty, the kinks, which is why I'm kind of encouraging folks to start now and learning now. So what we talked about today was really just scratching the surface of accessible galleys. For more in-depth information, tutorials, and other resources, please visit our website's journal accessibility page. You can use the short link at the top of the slide here. I'll paste it in the chat later. It is go.ufl.edu/jaccess, or you can scan the QR code there. I have compiled a lot of different resources and broken things down to kind of the best of my ability, and I'll continue to update it as I find more helpful information. There are a lot of folks out there who have awesome free resources, and then I know LinkedIn also has a few um, free courses on there that you can use through UF as well. So thank you for everyone for attending today's workshop. I'll be sending a follow-up email with a recording, slides, and any additional information and any links here that I have. I am working on potentially a few more workshops to focus more in depth on PDFs and HTML later this year, assuming things go to plan. So please stay on the lookout. I hope this was helpful, and please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or concerns. I'm going to stop the recording now, and then we'll just go ahead and open this space up for Q&A.